Investing doesn't have to be complicated. In today's episode, we lay out 7 straightforward habits that we believe will make you a highly effective investor. Hello, my name is Andrew Busa, and I'm a financial planner here at Advisor Investments. I'm joined by my colleague, Rick Winters, today. Rick is a vice president at Advisor, and he works with clients to help them reach their financial goals. He's a certified financial planner, and I'm pretty sure you've picked up some other designations along the way, right?
Yep, just trying to keep myself busy and fresh.
Exactly. Stay sharp. So, one of my favorite books, and Rick, I know you love this too, is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Whenever I hear that there are 7 actionable steps that you can take to improve your life, I take notice. So, today we're going to take that same framework and discuss 7 pieces of useful advice that you can use to improve your investment portfolio. These aren't just items to think about now, this could be useful year round.
That's right. Yeah, these are things that you need to be thinking about literally each stage and best of all at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a perfect time to do this episode and for you to listen. So without further ado, let's not waste any time. Let's jump right in to our first habit. So the first habit has to do with rebalancing your investment portfolio, specifically to rebalance continuously, not systematically. What do I mean by that?
Right. So, just kind of jumping into the whole concept is what do we mean by rebalancing is that,
Mm,
you know, you s- when you first get into investing, you spend a lot of time, maybe personally, maybe you're reading about it. Ideally, you're working with your investment advisor and you come up with the idea that you have a certain weighting of your portfolio towards stocks versus bonds or cash or other investments. And for a simple example, let's say you're a 60-40 investor, 60% stock and 40% bonds, and your
mhm,
portfolio performs extremely well in a given year. And January rolls around the following year, and you look at your portfolio and you're like, you're not 60-40 anymore, but you're 65% stock and 35%
mhm.
bonds. So conventional wisdom would say, hey, rebalance that. Let's get that back to your target. And here at Advisor Investments, we take a much broader view of that concept and do not subscribe to that conventional once a year rebalance. We like to let the portfolio actually take care of itself. Use the various things that are happening in your account in a given year to try to get back to that target so that you can actually through distributions or just things where you need a cash flow or maybe a fund's paying out or you're earning interest or dividends, etc.
Right. Instead of sticking to a rigid approach of saying, on this date, it's time to rebalance, it's really more about letting life dictate your rebalancing strategy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's definitely about life because if you go in there in January and rebalance your portfolio, and the reason that it's up to 65% stock is probably not because bonds have lost a significant amount of value, but because your stocks went up. So when I sell those
Mm,
stocks to rebalance, what am I doing? I'm creating taxes right
right.
off the bat, right in January. I'm going to be creating a capital gain when I could use the full year and the various things that I need to do with it to accomplish that. And if I rebalance and then need to go get money later in the year, I got to go and sell something again and potentially create more tax.
Right. And we'll touch on taxes in different ways as we go through these 7 habits. But I think that's a good overview of the first one. Moving to the second habit, this has to do with knowing your mutual fund distributions and building a calendar around them. Rick, give us a little bit of background about what fund distributions are and why it makes sense to build a calendar here.
Yeah. Okay. This is very important because a lot of people, if you've been investing in mutual funds for years, this is no news to you.
Hmm.
Funds pay out distributions. And most often you're going to get your distributions in November and December. So it's a time of the year where you're going to be able to expect that you'll be seeing quite a bit of cash potentially showing up in your portfolio. This
Right.
and that's just to be clear, we're really focusing our attention in this section on this habit in your taxable account.
Mm,
We're because these distributions are things that we would recommend that you have directed to your money market in an IRA, since there's no risk of a tax on that distribution, and we can trade. And in our case, because we don't have cost associated with trading, we can let that distribution reinvest in the mutual fund. That distribution is made up of capital gains, dividends, and interest. But in the IRA, none of those matter because they're not taxable. But in your taxable account, these distributions are going to be coming throughout the year. again, the majority at the end,
Hmm.
dividends, interest, and capital gains. And you want to make sure that you're factoring this into your plan. Because if you need to take money out of your account to buy gifts, pay bills, buy a car, do some work on your house, it might be better to know when your funds may be paying you a taxable distribution that you can use then, rather
Hmm.
than going in and trading and creating a capital gain unnecessarily.
Right. If you aren't aware of what the fund distributions are and when they're going to happen, you could potentially unknowingly purchase a mutual fund that has a capital gains distribution for a fund that you haven't been there to experience the growth for. That would be painful.
That's right. That's why this calendar concept is the habit, the
Right.
good habit, so that because money is going to be coming in and going out throughout the year. And if you get you're in a position to make a meaningful deposit in September and you just blindly go in and start buying up your investments because you already own them, then you may be buying a capital gain that you played no part in. You
Hmm.
had no benefit from. Now, I don't want to make it sound like that you don't buy investments in September, because there is quite a bit of strategy about how you can use distributions to your advantage
Mm.
by buying them at certain times. You just have to be eyes wide open, aware of what you're walking into. So that calendar is kind of that gatekeeper for making good decisions throughout the year. And I guess that's the gatekeeper would be to keep you from making bad decisions
Yeah.
throughout the year. Yep.
No question. I know we work hard with our clients on this and internally to make sure that we're very aware of when funds are paying out distributions. So we talked a lot in this habit about gains and tax gains and being aware of that. The third habit has to do with tax loss harvesting, and specifically be proactive when it comes to tax loss harvesting. So talk to us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, I'll state this one clearly.
Yeah.
Tax losses have economic value to you. And if you miss taking advantage of them by a position that you own, an investment that you have, drops in value. I'm not talking about 0.5% or $100, but if, let's say, it drops a meaningful amount, 5%, and that may be a $10,000
Hmm.
loss, you do want to be in a position to be able to take that loss. Now, let me take a step back and actually tell you what I'm talking about here.
Hmm.
So, let's say you make a $100,000 investment in something, and it grows. Um, by 10%. So now your investment is $110,000, and you were to sell that position for any number of reasons why you would do that,
Hmm.
and you realize that $10,000 gain. Well, that gain is taxable to you, and it can be taxable depending upon how long you held it either as long term or short term, and they
Hmm.
are treated different for tax purposes. Well, so that was a good investment. I made money, but if I'm just letting that ride throughout the year, I can guarantee I will pay taxes on it. If
Hmm.
I have another position that may not be performing so well, I could sit there and say, hey, just going to let that one ride that out and hope it comes back to its full value. Or I can actually take a different step and I could actually sell that position. So let's say I bought it for 100,000 and it fell to 90,000.
Hmm.
Well, I could sell that position and realize a $10,000 loss. Now, that $10,000 loss is able to offset that $10,000 gain that I had, meaning I don't have a tax. Now, you say, well, what's the use of that? I just gave up on an investment. Well, we're not suggesting that you give up on investing. We just say sell that position, turn around and buy something of, we don't leave that in cash. We buy something of similar style.
Hmm.
Maybe a utility stock. We buy a utility ETF to replace it. And then, because we're now fully invested, if that position goes up back to 110, well, I made my money back. I realized my loss and I offset the gain that I had realized on my other trade. That is very smart. That is a great habit. We
Yep.
are very proactive with that with our clients and make it something that we are doing all throughout the year. It's not a January thing. It is not a December thing. It is an every month as the market moves habit that you
Mm.
have to employ.
I agree. I mean, I see taxes as very much um, uh, tactical opportunities when it comes to working those. So these are they might seem like little things over the course of the year, but if you kind of do these strategies correctly,
Hmm.
it can really save you on taxes, and it allows you to be opportunistic with your investments rather than sort of on your heels, right?
Yeah, you actually just took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say, hey, it puts you on your toes rather
Yes.
than your heels. You just went to the heels first, so
Yeah.
you got half of what I was gonna say. I had
Yeah.
to
There
fill in the
you go.
rest.
There you go.
So yeah, you want to be on your toes with this stuff. This is fun. This is
Hmm.
this is where you're not falling victim to the market or just
Mm,
kind of passively working your way through. This is where I get to add value in my clients' investment portfolios, but in a way that unfortunately for maybe tracking historical performance, I don't get to add it to the actual decimal point in return that we report to you each quarter. You just have to
right.
know that we're doing some good stuff over here and saving you a lot of tax money.
Yeah. So the key with this habit again, tax losses have economic value to you. So be sure to be opportunistic with those. So let's move on to number 4 here. And we're still sticking with the overall theme of taxes with this one. And that is, do not automatically reinvest dividends in your taxable account. Now that might seem counterintuitive to some listeners. So talk about that one.
Yeah, so this is a universal rule at Advisor Investments. We do not automatically reinvest distributions from funds, that's interest, dividends, or capital gain distributions from funds automatically back into an investment. And the reason is that I want to have control over the investments I make in a situation where I may be compounding a tax problem for myself.
Hmm.
So if investment pays out a distribution, it automatically buys back something. I'm giving up other control that I would have otherwise had. I may need to use that cash for, as I mentioned earlier, basic life expenses,
Hmm.
rent, mortgage, fill in the fridge, paying a bill, or maybe ideally giving a gift to someone in the family, someone you love. But the idea that you're going to just let that money sit there in cash is absolutely not the case. It falls back to one of our other habits, which was using the portfolio as it lives to do things like rebalance
Mm.
the portfolio, maybe build a new position in another investment that you've been looking to add to, or I should not say add to, but build to
Hmm.
begin with. So it's yeah, do not automatically reinvest. That does not apply for the IRA. I mentioned this earlier. I'm going to repeat myself for good reason. Just reinvest in the IRAs. You can trade freely. I'm assuming that you're in the same position we are, where you're not paying transaction costs with that statement.
Right. And I want to point out too a little bit of nuance here, how these first 4 habits work together a little bit. Let's say you were automatically reinvesting inside of your taxable account. Well, you could then unintentionally buy a mutual fund distribution, which we talked about in the second habit. So you can
That's
see how
right.
these things kind of layer together. It's interesting
Yeah, it's absolutely all of every one of these working together is additional money in your back pocket.
for sure. So let's move on to number 5 then. So, the fifth habit is to take full advantage of tax deferred and tax free growth. Now, this one might seem obvious, but it's a moving target, and you can't forget the contribution limits change every year.
That's right. So if you're looking at maxing out your retirement accounts this year that you're in, and you've done all you've done made all the necessary adjustments to make sure your percentage is going in, well, each year, because these contribution limits are pegged towards inflation, they can adjust.
Mm,
And more frequently now, they have been adjusting year in and year out. And so you need to go back to your paycheck and make sure that the percentage that you were contributing for this year will actually get you to that number. And for these retirement accounts through work, this is a December 31st deadline.
right.
So if this is something that's coming through your paycheck as an employee, you do need to be able to make sure, not rather than trying to play catch up because we didn't put enough towards that account early in the year,
Mm.
which would affect your week to week or biweekly or monthly cash flow.
Right. So those employer sponsored plans, your 401k, 403b, you have till the end of the calendar year to make your contributions to those plans. Whereas something like your IRA, your Roth IRA, your health savings account, you have till the tax deadline to make those contributions, April 15th, right?
That's right. And I appreciate you going through and actually listing some of the names of what we're talking about here
Hmm.
rather than me just saying it's just your 401k because it's not. It actually, yeah, you have so many ways that you can save.
Yep.
Don't be naive to any of them. Make sure you talk with your investment advisor, please, us, when you have a question,
Hmm.
because I know we can help. And this is one of the key ingredients where you're just doing implementing this habit of saving routinely early and often
Hmm.
to make sure that you're working towards those longer term goals that you've set for yourself.
Right. Well, I had to mention health savings account and Roth IRAs because we have former podcasts on those topics. So
I wonder who talked about those.
yeah, I don't
I
know.
heard these are pretty good guys.
Decent.
I think they're very informative.
Yep, absolutely. I
Andrew, I
highly
think you know
recommend.
them. I do. I recommend those too. We'll get
Um,
those numbers in the notes after here, so you can go back and take a look.
yes, I was about to say you can check up on these numbers on the key financial data sheet that we can attach to this
Oh,
episode
that
here.
too. So you're
Yeah.
yes. So not only can you go back and listen to our podcasts
Mm,
for some self promotion, you can pick out my favorite sheet that I keep
yes.
on my desk. I have it right here. There it is. It's called the my I call it the greatest financial cheat sheet ever.
Yep. How many
So
times a day do we look at this thing?
I mine's
Lose
actually
count.
got a coffee stain on it and it's got wrinkles all over it. So
Yep.
I could use a new one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll
We'll
send you a
make sure to
picture. I'm not lying.
we'll add that. We'll add that to our to do
10
list.
times a day.
All right. Let's move on to number six before someone gets hurt here. So the sixth habit is to never ever miss a required minimum distribution from your account. We spend a lot of time to make sure that this doesn't happen to our clients.
That is exactly right. We have layers and layers of spreadsheets that we start really looking in depth at in September. There's a number of relationships that we work with that do need to take distributions throughout the year, so they're usually all set, and we know that we're just kind of checking up to make sure we're going to hit that required minimum distribution,
Hmm.
which is usually something that can be taken care of through the custodian that you work with. But if you've been ignoring it and
Hmm.
you have not set up preset instructions, we're going to find it.
Great.
And you should be looking too, because there's a really good reason for it. And that is because missing your required minimum distribution um, would be a 50% penalty, which
Yep.
is pretty expensive. And I know I jumped right into the part of telling why you wouldn't want to miss your required minimum distribution, but Andrew, maybe we can tell them what an actual when does that RMD kick in,
Yeah.
and
Well,
what is it?
yep. Yeah. And this is a recent change too, because so the RMD age used to be 70 and a half. Now it's 72. So what does this mean? Well, let's say you're spending your whole life building up a retirement account, either your 401k or your IRA, and you're getting a tax deferred growth on that vehicle. Well, eventually the IRS comes around and says it's time to pay the piper. In this
Mhm.
case, being Uncle Sam. So there comes a time, right now it's 72, when you need to start taking money out of that account. It's mandatory. And those distributions are going to be taxable to you. So the IRS finds a way to get their money, is sort of the long story short here.
That's right. So a couple special rules, caveats to the
Mhm.
simple it's 72 and take your distribution is
Right.
that first year you have the ability to delay a little bit into the following year, so you can, just giving you, I guess, a little bit of a break
Hmm.
to make sure that you don't miss your first distribution. But if you do that and let it go to the following year's April 1st, you are going to be taking two distributions in that year. I would not say that that's a good habit.
Hmm.
The other one is if you're still working through an employer
Yes.
plan past 72, so you enjoy the work you're doing, or you have to continue working. The good news there is you do not have to take a required distribution from that plan that you are actively participating in. That has no impact on your personal IRA account, but only the company sponsored plan that you are actively participating in,
Right. So that can be a reason to leave money in a 401k or 403b rather than roll it
or
over.
put it back in. Yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
advise
That's a good
many
point.
many people to do that.
I
Yes.
want to add just one more caveat to that one, is that as long as you are not or have never been a 5% or greater owner in your company, are you able to delay that RMD inside of your 401k or
The living
403b, right?
disclaimer. I like it.
Right.
You don't
Yep.
even have to read in the notes. We're gonna give it to you right now.
Exactly. All right, good. So the seventh and final habit to keep in mind. Uh, this is give with taxes in mind. So we're talking about charitable giving here. This is a big topic, but how do you boil this down?
Yeah, the habit is the good that we're paying attention to the taxes, but I want to put everything in its proper order. Is that you are giving to charity
Yes.
because you want to support charity.
Hmm.
That is the number one reason. It may be a church, it may be an organization, it may be a cause that you feel strongly about, and you want to support that. Um, but as you're taking that action, don't just write checks out of the checkbook without thinking about how is that the smartest means for me to do that. Because with the more recent tax law changes, it's really kind of changed the playing field for how people should manage their charitable giving. Because one thing that had changed is that the standard deduction is significantly larger.
Hmm.
Uh, on the basic, it's over 24,000 for couples, and filing jointly. And for people over the age of 66, there's actually additional standard deduction as well. So if you're someone that doesn't have enough itemized deductions to get up over that number, and you write $5,000 in charitable giving, you are not getting a deduction
Hmm.
for that charitable giving. But you're not without hope. There are other ways to do that, and I think there's a couple strategies. Andrew, am I covering enough of that first part to
Yeah,
lead into? Okay,
yeah, I think that's perfect.
yeah. So I just want to make sure that when you think about your charitable giving, there are some strategies to try to make sure that you get over that standard deduction, so you can actually get some additional benefit from your giving. One of those would be a couple strategies that people are employing are to kind of pool their gifting together. You know that you
Mhm.
give $5,000 a year. I know that's not a small number. That's a meaningful gift, but that's what we're going to have to be talking about to get to there. And
Right.
what you would do is you take 3 years of your gifting, not necessarily write all those checks right out to a charity, but you put that contribution into a donor advised fund. That's an account that you can make a gift to that you still have control over. It's not your money; it's been given to a charity, but you then have the ability to direct it out to the charities that you specifically want to support this year, next year, or 5 or 10 or never years from now. It just gives you the ability to get the deduction. You can give the money away to your charity later.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. These charitable giving funds or donor advised funds, these are really cool strategies. Like you said, you get that immediate tax deduction for your contribution. Um, but then you can choose how to invest it. We can manage those for you. There's just loads of options when it comes to these.
That's exactly right. So with other parts of the charitable giving is that you don't want to with the planning is that you don't want to again just write that check or just start putting money into donor advised funds without thinking about it.
Right.
You should treat your giving similar to how you would treat anything that you consider to be very important to you. Like if you were running a business, you wouldn't just walk in and say, "Hey, I don't really know what I'm going to do today to get, to try to help my business move forward." You would have taken the time to, on the higher level, write a mission statement or a vision statement, so you know that what your overall drive is. You should be doing very much the same thing for your charitable giving,
Mm,
for your benefit and the benefit of your family. So I think that there's a lot of structure that you can put in, and that charitable giving for charitable reasons is the number one. But number two, if you plan wisely and think ahead, you can take full advantage of the tax benefits of that as well.
sure. Yeah. And I think this one is a perfect example of why it's important to update your financial plan on an ongoing basis because, you mentioned at the beginning of this habit where the standard deduction increased significantly. If you weren't paying attention and you were just continuing to do, say, this $5,000 charitable gift every year, well, all of a sudden, you're no longer itemizing that. So this is just why it's important to speak with your advisor about these strategies and have a clear plan.
That's right. And one other thing that we didn't touch on, which in this charitable giving, is
Mm,
one of the rules that is now permanent from a couple years ago, which is you can give to charity if you're someone that's taking your required distribution each year.
mhm.
You will be in a position to be able to give directly from your IRA to a charity, and that will be non-reportable
Mhm.
income, non-deductible because you didn't report it as income. So, and that is meaningful because that will reduce your total adjusted gross income for calculations related to like medical expenses,
Right.
or even the calculation to come up with your Medicare premium. So if that is available to you and you're over 72 and taking your required distributions and you have charitable interest, QCD. You
Yep.
should be talking about it. Do not be naive of that. It
Yeah.
is incredibly
QCDs.
powerful.
It's an efficient way to give. Um, you know, Giving highly appreciated securities. Again, that's an efficient way to give as well. There's a whole load of topics we could go into here. One thing that I heard that I really like is that a lot of times cash is the most expensive asset that you can give
Hmm.
to you because there's just more efficient ways to do this
That's right.
from a tax perspective.
Yep. There's more pieces to it. I'm sorry. I know we'll wind up turning this into a charitable giving
Yeah,
podcast if we go too much further. So, but
right.
we can always expand on these topics to find out how they're more meaningful for you as a listener.
Absolutely. So with that, let's summarize. the 7 habits that we talked through today because we covered a lot of ground. So, number one, let life dictate your rebalancing strategy and not the other way around. Number two, know your fund distribution calendar. Number three, be proactive when it comes to tax loss harvesting. Number four, opt out of automatic reinvestment, specifically for taxable accounts. Number five, maximize opportunities for tax deferred and tax free growth. Number six, never ever miss a required minimum distribution. And finally, number seven, always give with tax in mind. Really be thoughtful there. So you'll notice as we talked through this list, a lot of this is tax related. So it's a great time to engage with your CPA or investment advisor team and make sure you're taking advantage of all of these opportunities. Taxes really are a year round consideration. It doesn't matter if it's the beginning or end of the year. If you follow these habits, you will be more efficient tax wise. Rick,
That's
anything
right.
else you want to throw in?
No, just agreeing with you. Taxes are always right around the corner. So
Yeah.
be thinking about it.
That's true. You can't escape it. So, this has been Andrew Busa and Rick Winters from Advisor Investments, and we're thanking you for listening to the Advisor You Can Talk To podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe and review our show. You can also check us out at www.advisoryoucantalktopodcast.com. Your feedback is always welcome, and if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to explore, please email us at info@advisorinvestments.com. Thanks for listening.